homeschoolers, it's Amber Marie from Forging Foundations. Today I am bringing a video to you about my school planning routine. I am going to be doing a year-round schedule this upcoming 2018-2019 school year. I will be starting at the end of July and going all the way until June 2019. So let's go ahead and take a look at how I plan my school year. So before I start planning out a school year, I have to gather a few materials. This includes any of curriculums I'm using or the table of contents of curriculums that I will be using later in the year. It also includes a notebook, my planner, and then just a folder with some of the other things I'll be showing you later that deal with my planning. In my notebook, I go ahead and I just write out what I want the year to look like. And if you look here, I kind of had to go through and figure out how many weekdays I wanted to teach certain lessons and how many weeks I actually wanted to teach during the school year. This year we are doing a year-round schedule and we'll be starting at the end of July. And to make sure that we go through the full year and don't end too early in the year, we are doing 40 weeks of school. Now that means that there are going to be 10-week terms, and during the school year there will be 12 weeks of breaks. And I kind of listed out the breaks I'd like to have. I also wrote down the curriculums I was going to be using along with how many lessons each one had. I'll show you how I figured out these numbers when we look at the table of contents of each of those curriculums. I also listed how many days per week I want to teach everything. So for Becca, Good and Beautiful, and CC, Classical Conversations, I wanted to do 4 days a week. Every day I wanted to practice handwriting. And 1 day a week I wanted to review reading cards and play math games. That 1 day is paired with the 4 days a week because the language arts curriculum and the math curriculum I'll be using are only 4 days a week. So on that 5th day, I wanted to do something fun where we play some games that are language arts and math focused. I also wrote out the rest of this past year down here because when I was planning out my school year, I did this a few weeks ago and we still had a few weeks left of the current school year. So this is just this past year. One thing I plan on doing in the second or the third and fourth term, that's what the T3 and T4 mean, are doing the building writers by Learning Without Tears. We'll see how that goes. I'm planning on doing 1 to 2 days per week. I don't want to push it as he will be end of kindergarten, early first grade by the time we get to this. So that's just something I'm planning on looking into, but not really sure if I'm going to do it. After I've gone through and written out what I'm going to do for the year, how many weeks I want to do it, what curriculums I'm using, I go ahead and I print out a year's calendar. What I started with was just printing out from time and date. I did a year at a glance where I just did June 2018 to May 2019. Partially because we were in June, I did that, but I could always start it with July, which is really the first term that I'll be doing. Because I did it like this, I did have to print the following school year, or the following school year, and write my last term on that page. So it would have probably made more sense for me to start on July for this one, but like I said, I was trying to plan out the breaks and I wanted to see how long those breaks would last. So if you take a look, what I started with doing was I went ahead and started with our summer break, which I wanted to have 5 weeks off before we started the new school year at the end of July. And as you can see, I marked the first week with a number 1 and continued doing so. Now, I did mention on my planning sheet here that I wanted to try and do 10-week terms. That does not mean that they had to be 10 weeks back to back. I did want to build breaks in, and I kind of did that based on our schedule with vacations and traveling and just holidays that I really wanted to make sure we had the week off to do that for. So I started by planning out the summer breaks, and I did the 5 weeks of summer break. Then I started listing out the weeks. Now, as you can see, we don't have a break up until week 8, or right before week 9. And I purposely planned that break because that's the week I'm due with our 3rd child. So I wanted to make sure that I did have at least a week off. We might add another break week in there and then just take away from somewhere else, maybe the end of the year. But I just wanted to make sure that we plan that in. So we do have 8 straight weeks of school. Now, another reason I put so many weeks in the beginning of the school year was because it is the beginning of the school year. I want to make sure we get on a schedule and our routine before taking a large break. Then, as you can see, I put ET1. That just means end of term 1. And I labeled each month that had term 1 in it at the top. Then I continue and I just keep going and adding the breaks in whenever I needed them or whenever we thought we'd be traveling for holidays or things like that. So I did that all the way up to week 40, which you can see on the next page right here. And then I started my summer break for the following school year. So this was just 2 year calendars that I printed out from, I think, Time and Date or Calendar Lab, one of those 2. I just printed a year from June to May, which I think in the future I'll do July to June, so that since I'm starting the school year in July. From this, I did go a little further just because I am one of those people that likes to use technology to my advantage and map things out so it's easier to see. And so I took it and created a calendar year at a glance. And I took those breaks and I kind of color coded them. So as you can see, I have a color key over here. Breaks or days off are in red. The beginning of and end of term 1 is blue. Beginning and end of term 2 is yellow. Beginning of end of term 3 is pink. And beginning of end and beginning and end of term 4 is green. And then you can see I did week numbers next to them as well so that I could see what week I'd be on or what the plan was. Obviously, if our schedule gets a little out of whack, I'm not going to stress and like recreate this whole thing. This is more just a guide for me so that I can see where we're at during the school year and make sure that we're on track for the end of the school year. So as you can see, there's a lot of breaks right here because this is summer break. And then we start our week 1 at the end of July. And you can kind of see that I do add in a few days off whenever there's certain holidays that my husband's gonna have off work, because I don't want to be doing schoolwork on a day that my husband's home and we can all hang out as a family. This is my curriculum scope and sequence for the school year, and all the blue is language arts, all the red is math, and all the green is handwriting. That's all I'm focusing on this upcoming school year for my son's kindergarten year, because I am part of Classical Conversations. He gets a lot of science and history through Classical Conversations, so I'm not going to purchase a separate curriculum for that at the moment. The one thing you will see here is that I have more than one curriculum or level per subject. So as you can see, language arts, right now we're using the Good and the Beautiful Level K primer, and we stopped midway through because I did start it a little late in his pre-K kindergarten year. As I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, I did combine pre-K and kindergarten curriculums this past school year. However, I'm not starting his official kindergarten year until this upcoming school year, 2018 to 2019. So as you can see, we made it about halfway through the K primer, and I was doing just 2 lessons a week because many of the lessons had 2 to 3 pages, and I'd kind of split them over 2 days. So I was going to continue that pattern for the rest of his kindergarten year. We'd still be doing 4 days a week like I showed in my notebook. However, 2 lessons would take those 4 days. So I didn't want to really rush him too much. I do want to make sure that I'm practicing his reading. I will also be using Explode the Code, and I'll talk about that in my summer video. We are doing some practice things during the summer so that he doesn't lose any of the things that he has gained. And I purchased the level A, B, and C of the Explode the Code. So if there's days where I notice that we have finished these 2 lessons, I'm not gonna move ahead. I'm just gonna go ahead and fill the space with some Explode the Code lessons that review the things he's already learned. So then by week 11, we'll be moving into the level K, Good and the Beautiful Language Arts. And as you can see, that takes us to about week 35 if I stick with the 2 lessons a week. And then I have 5 weeks of overflow. And basically, as you can see, I put at the bottom for myself or anybody that's looking at it, overflow allows for the lessons to be spread out over the remaining weeks in case of sickness or other interruptions to the schedule of our school year. So that's where I was talking about in our schedule. If we turn out that there's a week we are all sick and we can't do schoolwork, well, that's accounted for in all of the subjects. As you can see, I have at least 4 weeks in each of the subjects where we can push things back and we don't have to worry. So if we have no sicknesses during the school year, which would be a blessing, then as I get closer to the end of the school year and we haven't used these overflow weeks, then I might spread the last few weeks out and just do a few lessons at a time. Now, I did mention that I was going to be doing Abeka 4 days a week, but from looking at this past year, the Abeka wasn't too intensive for my son, so with the mini lesson and everything, I think I'm going to stick with 5 days a week. But as you can see, still got overflow down here, so I'm going to go ahead and stick with 5 days a week for the Abeka lessons. Then we go to the Good and the Beautiful Level K Math, and that's where I go ahead and mapped out the lessons for that. And I'll show you where I'm kind of getting all of this. The handwriting, we are using the Handwriting Without Tears, and we made it to lesson 26 this past year. And so we're going to start on lesson 27, which actually turns out to be the lowercase letters, which you'll see in the table of contents when I show you. But we go ahead and we do handwriting every day. And as you can see, we finish the Level K book by week 8. So in week 8, we'll go ahead and finish and start the Level 1 book. And then we'll continue with Level 1. And then as you can see, we're also going to get Level 2 in. Now, I realize that Level 1 is 1st grade, Level 2 is 2nd grade. However, I feel if he's getting the practice here and he's not struggling too much, we can continue with those upper levels because it is just handwriting and writing down words. He doesn't actually need to be able to read the words by that point. It's good practice with penmanship, so plan on continuing it. And like I said, there's overflow at the bottom, so if I need to spread it out a little more because it's being a little difficult for him, then we can do that. So here's my scope and sequence that I made, and how I made this was using the table of contents from different curriculums. Let me go ahead and show you that. The Level K Primer for Language Arts does not have a table of contents, but I did go ahead and flip to the back and see how many lessons there were, and as you can see, it has the lessons listed out, and the last lesson in the book was lesson 34. So on my planning sheet, you can see that lesson 34 was the last lesson for the Level K Primer. Now, I did print out, and you can get this on Jenny Phillips' website, The Good and the Beautiful, under the Language Arts curriculum. She has a sample of the Level K, and I just printed out what the Level K is reviewing over the year. And then I also printed out the table of contents, which is in her sample. I love that it's in her sample, so that I didn't have to buy it yet. I'm planning on buying it later in the year, and I can go ahead and just take a look and see how long it'll map out for. So looking at the lessons, there were a total of 47 lessons in the Level K for the Good and the Beautiful. And as you can see, that takes us to about week 35 on our scope and sequence if I'm doing 2 lessons a day, or 2 lessons a week. So like I said, you can get this on Jenny Phillips' website under Language Arts, and the K course book at a glance. That's where I got this. For math, I did mention we are finishing our Abeka. Now, Abeka also didn't have a table of contents in the front. It just started off with the first page. So this was a little time consuming, but I went ahead and I went through and numbered every lesson for myself. I didn't want to go off of the page numbers because I was doing a front and back of a page for each lesson. So I took probably 15 minutes to myself and kind of went through and found the last lesson, or went through the whole book, marking each one until I got to the last lesson, which I figured out was 74 lessons in this Abeka K5 workbook. So on my scope and sequence, I took it to lesson 74, and then I started the Good and the Beautiful Level K math. And that was also based off of the table of contents from the online website. So finally we go into handwriting, and as I mentioned, I was going to be going through 3 of the Handwriting Without Tears for this upcoming school year. We stopped at lesson 26 and then we're going to start that, or this past school year, and then we're going to start that this 27 this upcoming school year. And how I went ahead and planned this out was using the table of contents. Now, there's no lesson numbers, there's only page numbers. However, I wanted to start with lesson 1. So I went ahead and I just numbered each letter or page or a few pages for the lessons up until lesson 63. So we stopped this past school year at the last capital letter, and we're going to be starting the school year with the lowercase letters and then into the numbers. So this is the level letters and numbers for me. This is probably the kindergarten level. For the level 1, it's called My Printing Book. And I just printed the table of contents off christianbook.com. They have wonderful sample pages from each curriculum, so I suggest you go on there if you're ever looking to buy a curriculum. Look through their sample pages. It gives you a good idea of what the curriculum looks like. And I just printed the table of contents off for the My Printing Book, which is considered level 1, and went ahead and numbered the lessons for this level as well, and I got 64 lessons for that one. And then finally the level 2, which is Printing Power, and I went ahead and did the same thing, went through, labeled the lesson numbers up until lesson number 45. So each of these workbooks we will go through. Now, as you can see, I only have the table of contents of level 1 and level 2 because I plan on purchasing them later in the year as we're still starting the school year with this one. So we'll be going through all of these workbooks this upcoming school year, and as you can see, like I said, handwriting is every day. So I am going to be doing it 5 days a week, so there's 5 lessons a week, but I do have room for overflow just in case we need it. During the school year, I will go into my planner, which is where I will go ahead and write down the lessons for that week. So as you can see, I put a little key for myself. Good and the Beautiful is at the bottom, G and B, and Handwriting Without Tears. Just wrote out Abeka because it's pretty short. And I would go ahead and just write down what days. Now this was in May because it was Memorial Day weekend, and I went ahead and put the dates up here so I could see. So end of May, beginning of June, that was like our 3rd to last week of school. So I went ahead and put the lessons down I wanted to complete, and then as I went through them, which I forgot to check these off, but as I went through them, I just checked them off. And as you can see, like the Good and the Beautiful, I put 10 half. Well, that's because some of the Good and the Beautiful lessons are a little difficult for my son to do it all in one sitting. So I would split and do the first half and then the second half the next day. So this is kind of where I put my homeschool plan for the week, and I use this every week just to kind of see at a glance what's going on as far as play dates and games, soccer games, and all that stuff. Thank you so much for watching my video on planning a school year. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. Also, be sure to like the video if this was helpful for you, and share it with any of those other homeschoolers that need some help with planning a school year. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Thank you so much for watching again, and see you next time.